Hopefully you had some success implementing the stack data structure. In this section, we're going to go through some JavaScript implementation of a stack. Now the thing to keep in mind here is that we're still going to be making use of an array to hold the actual data. And so we are essentially really just writing some accessor methods to kind of hook this stack class up to the underlying array. So with that in mind, let's get to it. I'm going to give myself a little bit of space here, and then the first thing I'm going to do is to declare my constructor function because I need to initialize an array when class stack is instantiated. I will then use that internal array to manage all the data that gets added and removed from our stack. So I'll create my constructor, and then inside of here I will initialize an array and assign it to this.data, like so. Remember, there's absolutely nothing special about assigning this array to this.data. It could be this.underlying container, or this.myStack, or this.myArray, whatever you want it to be. I'm just arbitrarily calling this thing this.data. So that will give us the underlying array that holds our actual data. Next, we're going to put together our push method so that we can push a record onto our stack. So I will create a new method called push. It will accept a record as an argument, and then we want to take this record and stick it into our array. Now, of course, arrays have an underlying method or have a method on them called push that does the exact same thing that we want to do. So the push method adds a record to the very last index of an array. So we'll simply say this.data.push, like so. Now, to make sure that we always get back the last record or the most recently inserted record whenever we pop from our stack, we can call the exact same named method on this array as well for our pop method. So we'll add pop, and for this one, simply say return this.data.pop. So if you're familiar with the push and pop methods on an array, and I am really assuming that you are here, yeah, that's pretty much exactly what a stack is doing for us. Not a lot of complexity here when it comes to the JavaScript implementation. Nonetheless, I do want you to kind of have an idea of how these things are put together in the JavaScript world. Now the very last method we have to implement is the peek method. So we'll add peek, and our goal with peek is to return the last record inside of our array without actually removing it. And so we can simply access this.data at the last index. So this.data.length -1. And then we want to make sure that we return that record. All right, so really not that bad. Just 4 methods, 4 lines of code inside them total. Let's check our tests out to see how they're doing. And yep, we got 4 tests passing here. So again, whenever we think of a queue and a stack, essentially identical except for the order in which we are adding and removing records. And heck, I shouldn't even really say adding. Adding is the same. The only real difference here is the order in which they get removed when we take them out of our data structure. So the two of them are very similar, and to be honest, there are not a tremendous number of interview questions that you might see around queues or stacks directly. Usually a lot of questions around queues or stacks are to say, hey, do XYZ operation, but you have to use a queue, or do XYZ operation and you have to use a stack. And so we'll see a very classic example of the type of interview question you will see with queues and stacks in the next section. So let's take a break and tackle that question. See you in just a minute.